Hello, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. We are so glad that you joined us. I'm Christine Barnhart, your host for Supply Chain Unfiltered. This is where we provide a candid look at the challenges that supply chain professionals face and bring in forward thinkers and innovators to share their insights on the strategies, technologies, and collaborative efforts shaping the future of supply chain. So before we get started, I would love for you to take a moment and let us know where you are located today by posting in the chat. So for me, you may notice my background looks a little bit different. I'm actually in Toronto at Nulogy headquarters, big corporate meetings to kick off 2025 on the right foot. Had a little team building last night, did some curling, which was such an eye-opening experience. Anybody that says it's not a sport has never done it, because I'm going to be honest, I'm kind of feeling it a little bit today. So welcome. And I'm just super excited about today's episode. Our special guest is Mr. Jake Barr, the John Wayne of supply chain. And we are so excited to have Jake join us this morning. He's a great friend, mentor, just like, I don't know. I don't know if you're infamous or famous, Jake, in supply chain, but, obviously one of the two. So welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Christine. Actually, I'm probably a little bit of both because of my unfiltered opinions from time to time.
That's why you're perfect for supply chain.
If I knew we were going to have a curling match, I would have shown up in full hockey gear today. Come on.
I was really thankful. I looked on, did some research before I packed my bag, and it was like, it's going to be cold. Like, it's cold out on the ice. So I packed my, my football vest that I bought, my heated vest. I had my heated vest on, and all the guys were jealous because they were like, what is that? I was like, oh, this is my heated vest. And it was perfect. So,
well, that just shows you were prepared for a Midwest football game. That's all.
Yeah, I was. Exactly. I mean, my team didn't make the playoffs, but it's all good.
Unfortunately, our Bengals failed to deliver.
Yes, they did.
Not of their own demise.
Exactly. Ooh, Vincent is dialing in from Orlando. We have somebody from Zimbabwe. I love it. And India.
I love it. Yeah.
It's an eclectic group. Where are you at today, Jake?
As you noticed from the glow, I am deep south, away from the frigid temperatures.
So you got a bit of
literally on the beach in Mexico.
Yeah, a bit of a tan. I'm jealous. I mean, although as a redhead, I don't tan anyway, but still, it's all good. So I think to get started this morning, I would really love for you to spend a few minutes kind of giving people your background, because you've done so much in your career. So kind of where did you start? What's your journey been? And what are you doing these days?
Yeah, so my first career journey was actually 3.5 decades, leading various supply chain operations across Procter & Gamble globally. So lived in every region of the world and built manufacturing facilities, set up new supplier processes, own distribution into the markets, helped to bring new innovation in terms of technology going and leading our consumer driven strategy. Stepped away from that, retired, and thought I was taking some time off and giving back. Spent a year with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation building new vaccine supply chains going into the African continent to help with the child mortality rates. And then literally got, I'll call it, pulled into consulting because I was going through the Miami International Airport with my spouse after a long extended vacation, and had an executive from a consumer products company that actually knew me because of an industry committee we both sat on. And then in the midst of all of that, get I get my services bartered away so that my wife can spend like 8 weeks in a condo on the beach someplace. So true story. But I lead a supply chain consulting firm. We do work across 6 industry verticals, everything from life science and pharma and new cell gene therapy regimens, et cetera, because of the portfolio changes in most of the med companies, pharma companies, consumer products, consumer staples, fast fashion, retail apparel, all that stuff.
I love it. It's amazing. And I mean, it's part of the reason that I just adore interacting with you, because I always learn something. You have such a wide, kind of variety of industries and roles that I can always learn something.
Hey, and we share something else in common. In my free time, I actually end up co-hosting on Supply Chain Now from
I
time to time.
know, it's amazing, isn't it? Well, and you know what? Like, you spent a lot of, like, you went to UK and you lived in Cincinnati. And now you're in Nashville. You're a true Midwesterner, and so you and I, like, we kind of bond on that,
That's right.
especially when we're traveling all over the world.
We
So,
know where good food is at all times.
my lights went out in my. Oh well, it's all good. We're going to pivot. Okay, so hopefully everybody on the call kind of understands, just how incredibly varied your background is, and all the experience, and therefore it will make sense to them why I wanted you to be like our first guest of 2025, because I think it's really important here at the beginning of the year that we both look back on 24, and then I think you're the right person to help us make predictions and recommendations for 25. So let's start with there were a lot of ups and downs in 2024. What is your assessment of 24? Like, if you look back over the last year, what do you think went well from a supply chain perspective? What were the disasters? Like, what are the things that really stick out for you?
Um, Lessons learned, unfortunately, is that um, most companies took a dip in the water trying to fix their issues around supply chain agility and resilience, right? Because it was a year or 2 years removed from the effects of the pandemic. We had talent and call it retention stabilized for a period of time. Unfortunately, the business challenges, as you know, did not let up. And so those who are thinking, hey, we're going to go back to some sense of normality, what the hell is normality anymore?
Yeah.
Realistically, it's a constant state of a drumbeat of some type of disruption. You pray and hope that they aren't bundled on top of each other. But unfortunately, 24 started us back down a cycle where there have been, right? So we also we're dealing with the volatility and how to recover, do margin recovery, right? For
Yeah.
all the inefficiencies that we had to build for some redundancies in the supply chain, et cetera. And that's honestly, Christine, it's carrying into 25. And I believe there are like 4 factors that are facing most companies as we walk into 25 that they really need to be addressing.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like we like we had a lot of disruption 2020, 21, 22, 23, right? Like, and it almost feels like we're back to, like, people kind of got complacent last year where they were like, "Oh, things are back to normal. We don't Who cares about resilience and agility and, adaptation and flexibility? Cost, right?" And I'm like, whoa, full stop. Like,
You got to
you
have
know,
both. You
yeah,
have to have
exactly.
both. That's the unfortunate reality of today's world. It's not like you get a pass on one of those because I don't care if it's an unexpected disruption in the flow of materials, right? Or a supplier disruption, right? Look, interest rates have because of the inflationary effect and trying to get that under control in most places around the world are still extraordinarily high. Okay,
Right.
and That puts a tremendous amount of operating pressure, especially across supply chain processes and supply chain partners, be it 3PLs, logistics service providers, even common carriers, those kind of things. The default rates, the shutdowns, right? Even in North America and Canada alone was huge. It was an all-time high last year for the number of firms that went out of business, right? And so
Right.
you're talking about asset recovery and sales and disruptions in service patterns because, wait a minute, big player that I never thought would go out of business is gone now, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So 24, perhaps not like the best year for supply chain. We kind of needed to be smacked across the face a little bit. What are you seeing for 25? What does 25 look like?
Well, we've had some look. Anytime you're going to have administration changes, not only in the U.S. but in a number of countries
Right.
overseas and abroad, um, and the change in the political climate of what those administrations look as being a battle card for how they're going to, stay competitive themselves. Um, we've got an enormous amount of work underway right now. Look, we can call it a lot of things. You can call it reshoring, you can call it nearshoring, but I literally, there's not enough hours in the day for the calls that we have where we're going through and helping on program management and actually executing. Folks going, well, wait, okay, if that's going to happen, then what's our counter move? I mean, oh, well, we've got plants and facilities, okay, that we're going to have large scale tariffs and taxes placed on sourcing of goods there. Well, wait, what's the secondary source? So we have a number of firms. By the way, I hate to say it, but let's remind ourselves constantly of this one simple fact. No matter what material we're talking about in the world, okay, it can be ingredients and metals, et cetera, that go into smart devices, et cetera, or it can be ingredients that go into things like consumer products, whether it's paper
Right.
products or chemicals or whatever, right? There's a limited capacity of those, no
Yeah.
matter what we're dealing with,
Yeah.
which
It
industry
is
vertical,
finite,
right?
right?
It's
Yeah.
finite.
Yeah.
So it's just not like, hey, magically, we brought another 50% of capacity of these things online magically. So there are a limited number of secondary options,
Yeah.
but each and every one of them has an impact in both the cost, the resilience, the agility of actually getting to market, right? Wait, it was 4 days reaction time. Now it's 8 days. Oh, wait, well, how are we going to offset that? Are we going to buffer in finished product? Are we going to buffer in materials? Are we going to try and do some late stage differentiation on how we do final packaging? So we have a bottom line on that point alone. We've got a massive chaos going on right now because here's the truth. It's all supposition at the moment.
It is. It is.
Okay. No matter which administration change in which country we're talking about, none of it is firm yet, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so
Well,
we
and
have
even when it is firm, it can pivot in,
in
2 or 3 years. So you have to
less than
be,
that,
yeah,
less
you have
than
to be
that, right?
agile. You have to be ready to pivot, right?
Right. So we've got an awful lot that's going on there. We have a a ballistic missile surge in technology spending, right? And that really has taken the kind of two shapes, Christine. First, let's call, I think some folks got spanked dutifully. Okay. It was on purpose. They should have gotten it for kind of taking part of 24 off and getting caught by another couple of surprises. Right. And
Yeah.
so because of that, we see technology spend on both what I'll call a simple automation level. Okay. So there's a doubling down effect. We've got a lot of, I'll call it basic warehouse automation and a number of fulfillment processes, et cetera, underway. But equally ballistic missile silo size blast off that we're engaged on is a huge amount of what I'll call disruptive technology spending tied to delivering both predictive and prescriptive capabilities to run the businesses and the processes. We have one firm we've engaged with where literally they're live ingesting about 1 billion real-time update signals, um, and using AI capability to sort through noise, cancel, filter, pattern recognition, and then identify the three things out of the haystack of the 100,000 plus exceptions that actually either impact a production run
Right.
or the availability of product on a promised customer order, and then trigger back into the legacy solutions, things like TMS and ERP solutions, and all that for a stock transfer order or a new truck order or a new deployment or a new replenishment or a new production run without a human have to touch it.
So it's interesting. I'm going to kind of repeat back like some of what you said, because one of the things that I love about you is that you don't chase shiny objects, right? And
Nope.
and I'm that way too. I'm like, I see so many people in supply chain. First they were chasing blockchain, now they're chasing large language models, and I'm like, guys, like you've missed like this whole area of applying machine learning and artificial intelligence to the math problem that
Yes.
is your supply chain, that is going to yield really great results for you.
Yes.
And my thing is, it has to be part of the journey, right? Like, you don't get to skip from level 0 to level 5. It's just like a baby, right? They have to learn to roll over before they can learn to sit up, before they can learn to crawl, right? Like, and I
Crawl, walk, run.
exactly, 100%. Yes. So I love that, like, in that whole scenario that you talked about, kind of technology, you aren't advocating that people chase a shiny object. Not that I don't think that we should do things in large language models. I do, but I think there's a ton of like table stakes that people are not yet leveraging.
Christine, the crawl stage, literally, when used properly for just simple pragmatic executions, rains money. It just rains money because, look, I'm sorry.
No, I agree with you
Look,
totally.
we've both been around the industry for multiple decades and experience, and look, technically, if anybody should be like walking computer chips, we are, because we've gone through 1,000 permutations of the same problem, right, in different situations, right? So we should be able to, hey, we should be able to solve it on our own. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, you just can't.
Yeah.
There's too much data and information to be able to sift and find and understand, importantly, that one consequential transaction where the latest update tipped you over
Yeah.
the edge of a problem, right? So we've got good, hardworking people, and that actually brings me to kind of the third point of what we've been seeing percolate in the last few months. I made a reference that at least for a good part of early 24, I saw in most cases, most of the companies we were working with were fairly stable around personnel, right? Think about
Yeah.
it as the gaps that they had and the unfilled roles and right, they had gotten, I'll call it somewhat well again, where they had found the right people to put into the puzzle, right? I'm seeing an overt change in that. Um, in the last month, I saw it in a couple of firms right before the holidays, and I'm seeing it now on a couple of projects we have going on where we're back into a situation where folks are beginning to flight to other opportunities, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going, whoa, guys, hey, if that's going to occur. So in one project, we literally had to slow down the effort because the person who had the mission critical understanding of the work and the process and the way it was executed there left. right?
Yeah, and we've seen the same with the companies that we work with that, we spend a lot of time, educating them on, kind of what's important, how can we help their business? And then you kind of get close to, kind of starting an implementation, and then the entire makeup of the team changes, and you're like, damn it, now we have to start over. So we've got a couple of questions in the chat.
Yeah.
I'm Sanjay. I love that you're bringing up the Panama Canal, but I'm gonna opt not to address my thoughts on that one, because I think it's a really politically charged discussion that it has an impact on supply chain, but I don't know that we can influence it. So instead, I don't know who the LinkedIn user is that asked, "What are the biggest risks in 2025?" facing supply chain leaders? I think that's a great question for you, Jake.
Yeah. I think first and foremost, um, we are going to turn into reality um, a number of these point, counterpoint, tariff, trade restriction things that are on the table. Okay.
Right.
Whether any of us like it or not, whether it's rational or not. No, I mean,
No,
let's
agreed. And we
let's
don't
be
even know how
blunt, right?
sticky it is, right? Like
Some
it,
some of these, regardless, and again, I could point to things that are being offered up across continents, right? Some have some rational base to it. Some of them, are, in my view, are merely negotiating points and emotional, right? As a way of trying to say, well, tit for tat kind of routine. So first and foremost, a number of those are going to land. Now, will they, of what size and scale will they land
right.
is debatable, and I don't think there's an exact crystal ball in that. I couldn't give you a range. I'll wait. Are tariffs going to be 10 or really end up at 50 or 60% on certain types of goods? Here's the reality. There are going to be disruptions due to that. Okay. Now, what that also means is, I'm sorry, you should have already been doing your prep work to
Yeah.
understand a range and a level of confidence
Yeah.
of, if I need to shift, at what level does it becomes an issue for us, and how far in advance do I need to trigger that plan? So we're finding some folks, unfortunately, right now in 25, who are ringing the doorbell asking to come to the front of the queue to do a piece of work on stuff, and we're going, wait, you
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 haven't done that yet?
you haven't done any of
Right.
that yet? Really? Okay. So that's one. Second, I look, you know me, another nickname I go by is the great connector, because I have so many colleagues across so many industry verticals and companies that I know, and we talk a lot, right? This talent thing is starting to brew, okay?
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, Christine, in some of the cases, it's because workers, talent, are being forced back into a physical location. Okay.
We could have an entire
Entire
segment talking
discussion
about
just on that, right?
yeah. No,
But
agreed.
I call it, wait, we've changed, just like the Amazon effect changed our human dynamic of how we think about how quickly I expect a service and fulfillment. I'm going to suggest to you one of the aftermaths of the pandemic, and actually this work free location routine change the dynamics of the expectation of how folks are managing their work life, not only balance, but just the other elements of being able to manage, like young children
No,
at
agreed.
home and all that stuff, right? So
Agreed.
we've had literally folks ringing the doorbell. I've had repeated calls just in the last week where they're going, "Hey, Jake, I need a senior VP of supply chain," because when we told them they've got to come back and work at XYZ, they're saying, "Nope, I'm gone."
Right, exactly. So it's interesting you talked about connections, because if I'm not mistaken, you are who connected me with Scott DeGroot, from
Yes.
formerly Kimberly Clark, and I
Hmm.
see that he left us a comment in the chat. And we both love you, Scott. You are so insightful, and
The
um,
professor that
yes, Eh,
there, look, if you are going to be successful in a supply chain career, you must have a a fundamental belief that life is a constant learning journey. Scott is one of those folks that I've met across my career that I can promise you is constantly on a quest to learn something new.
Yeah. So what I mean, and I had Scott on the podcast last summer. If you missed the episode, go out to YouTube or go to Newlogy.com and find it, because we talked about like planning and making kind of foundational investments. And you alluded to this earlier. I think if I was going to give people advice for 25, spend the money to put in foundational investments that allow your people to quit doing non-value added work so that they can actually sit in a room and start to think about, well, what are the scenarios, right? Like people are coming to you and they haven't sat down and said, okay, here's a range. If it's at this end, what are the implications? If it's at this end, what are the implications? And people have not had time to do that because they're still bogged in like endless offline Excel spreadsheets doing mundane everyday tasks that technology exists to replace and make better.
Look, supply chain is really a neural network of 1,000 connections to pull off the impossible every day, right?
Yeah.
And most organizations at maximum can manage what I call one disruption, one thing that's not really working right.
Right.
Unfortunately, we are living in a zone and a period now that, regardless of what month and day we're talking about, you can't go to any organization find where they're only working on one problem right now.
Right.
Okay. They're working on an LSP that went out of business. They're working on a shift because of the tariffs. They're working on a reliability issue in production processes, or a supply issue with one of the critical material suppliers, right? Because they're in a financial crunch, right? So now the number of variables I'm trying to manage on top of all the cascading transactional crap that falls out of those exceptions. Every single person needs to wear a hat that's a firefighter hat, because they have become glorified firefighters for the entire day, week, and month and year, right?
Right.
Sorry, you can't run the business if you haven't freed up the talent to be able to get over the top
Right.
of the fires and start redirecting how to get yourself away from those things.
And you're leaving so much money on the table when you do that. I mean, it's just crazy. So I knew 30 minutes was not going to be enough. And unfortunately, we're like close to the end of our time. And I 100% guarantee there are people that have more questions. So how can people get in touch with you, Jake?
I will not give out my phone number because I can't answer all the messages I have already. Okay. And I have somebody that actually answers the majority of the time. LinkedIn. Best way.
LinkedIn is best for me too. I mean, you can send something via email because my email is available through newlogy.com, but I'm actually better at answering LinkedIn messages than I am emails. From a Newlogy perspective, you guys can also connect with us. We have a number of events coming up in February in the UK. We're going to be at Manifest in Vegas. And I think CPA, the Contract Packaging Association, also in Clearwater, Florida. That I might have to try to pull rank to get to that one, just so that I'm not, in the deep freeze in the Midwest. So,
or you can make it to DP World in Dubai, next year as well, or this year as well.
I would love that. I've never been to the Middle East, and it's definitely on my bucket list.
It is Manifest on steroids.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Jake, for joining this morning. It's always a pleasure to speak with you. I would be remiss if we signed off this morning and I did not give a shout out to our show producer, which is Let's Talk Supply Chain, and encourage you to take a look at the wonderful work that they're doing to build up supply chain communities. If you are struggling to find a community of like-minded professionals where you can level up, network, learn about best practices from experts, look no further. Sarah and her team at Let's Talk Supply Chain have created the Secret Society of Supply Chain to provide a safe space. I would say it's very much like Jake and I's relationship and the discussion that we had today, right? They offer this really unique opportunity for you to connect, for you to grow. They have different types of communities, so you can pick the one that's right for you. So please do yourself a favor, head over to secretsocietyofsupplychain.com to explore which community was made for you. I also need to thank our show sponsor and my employer, Nulogy, an innovator in supply chain technology focused on decreasing the friction between suppliers and customers to everyone's benefit through collaboration and synchronization. On that note, I must say goodbye, but I'm hopeful you'll tune in next month. And if you have comments, suggestions, questions, please send them our way. We love to interact with the people that are, listening, watching, and, part of the supply chain community.